As the sun sets over the rugged highlands of the Horn of Africa, a shadow of unease stretches across the region, fueled by sharp accusations, military mobilization, and unresolved historical grievances. The fragile peace between Ethiopia and Eritrea, restored in 2018 after 2 decades of hostility, is once again teetering on the brink, with fears mounting of a renewed conflict that could destabilize an already volatile region. At the heart of this tension lies a bitter exchange of words, diverging narratives, and a provocative Eritrean military buildup, all set against the backdrop of Ethiopia's internal strife and regional ambitions. On February 18, 2025, Yemeni Gebri Meskel, Eritrea's Minister of Information, took to social media platform X to robustly rebut claims by Ethiopia's former president Mulatu Teshome, who accused Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki of stoking new conflicts in the Horn, particularly in Ethiopia's war-torn Tigray region. In a detailed 10-point post, Yemeni dismissed Mulatu's accusations as a false flag alarm, an audacious claim precisely intended to conceal and rationalize a warmongering agenda. He argued that Ethiopia's myriad problems, ranging from its deadly conflict with Tigray to its internal war in Amhara and its controversial port deal with Somaliland, lie at the root of regional instability, not Eritrea's actions. Yet just days earlier, on February 17, 2025, human rights concern Eritrea, HRCE, a UK-based advocacy group, issued a chilling report alleging that the Eritrean government had ordered a nationwide military mobilization, recalling demobilized soldiers and intensifying conscription efforts. Described as a deeply alarming escalation, this move has raised alarm bells among human rights observers and regional analysts, who fear it could signal preparations for conflict, or at least a defensive posture in response to perceived threats from Ethiopia. Together, these developments paint a picture of a region on edge, where historical animosities, geopolitical maneuvers, and human rights concerns converge to threaten peace. A history of hostility and unresolved disputes. The Ethiopia-Eritrea relationship is scarred by decades of conflict, most notably the 1998 to 2000 border war over the disputed town of Badme and surrounding areas. That war, which claimed tens of thousands of lives and cost both nations an estimated $1 million a day, ended with the Eritrea-Ethiopia Boundary Commission, EEBC, ruling in 2002, awarding Badme and other territories to Eritrea. However, Ethiopia's refusal to fully implement the ruling, keeping Badme under its control for 2 decades, left a festering wound, maintaining a no-war, no-peace standoff until 2018, when Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's historic visit to Eritrea normalized relations. Yemeni's post harks back to this history, asserting that Eritrea's actions have consistently aligned with international law, including its withdrawal of troops after supporting Ethiopia against Tigrayan forces during the 2020 to 2022 conflict. Eritrea normalized ties with Ethiopia in 2018 when the Abiy government publicly announced its readiness for the full and unequivocal acceptance and implementation of the EEBC award, he wrote, emphasizing Eritrea's good faith efforts to foster peace. Yet Mulatu's accusations, detailed in an Al Jazeera opinion piece and trending on social media, suggest Eritrea is now undermining that peace by exploiting divisions within the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, and opposing the 2022 Pretoria Peace Agreement, which ended the Tigray War. This divergence in narratives is not new, but has taken on renewed urgency. Mulatu, who served as Ethiopia's president from 2013 to 2018 under the TPLF-led government, claims Isaias is engineering a militia in Ethiopia's Amhara region and aligning with anti-peace elements in Tigray. Eritrea's attempts to exploit divisions within the TPLF, with its leader finding common cause with those unhappy with the peace agreement, threaten stability, Mulatu wrote, according to web reports from Addis Standard and Al Jazeera. Yemeni, however, counters that Eritrea has neither the interest nor the appetite to obstruct or tamper with a purely internal Ethiopian affair, framing Mulatu's claims as scapegoating to deflect attention from Ethiopia's internal crises. Eritrean mobilization, a sign of defiance or defense. The HRCE statement adds a critical layer to this tense tableau. On February 17th, HRCE reported that Eritrea's government had issued orders for a nationwide military mobilization, including recalling veterans and intensifying its notorious indefinite national service program. This escalation is deeply alarming, particularly given Eritrea's history of human rights abuses, including arbitrary detention, forced labor, and sexual violence against conscripts, said Elizabeth Chiram, HRC's director, in a statement reviewed by this outlet. For decades, Eritrea's mandatory military service, initially intended as an 18-month commitment, has morphed into indefinite conscription, driving mass emigration and drawing international condemnation. HRCE's report cites heavy roundups of conscripts and warns that the mobilization could exacerbate domestic unrest, with thousands fleeing to Ethiopia, Sudan, and beyond. If Eritrea perceives Ethiopia as a threat due to Mulatu's accusations or Ethiopia's regional moves, it may be preparing for conflict, Chiram said. But this could also backfire, fueling internal dissent and regional instability. Yemeni's post does not explicitly address the mobilization, but its defensive tone, emphasizing Eritrea's withdrawal of troops from Ethiopian borders and respect for sovereignty, suggests a readiness to counter any perceived aggression. Meanwhile, Mulatu's claims imply that such moves could be interpreted in Addis Ababa as confirmation of Eritrean hostility, potentially prompting Ethiopia to bolster its border defenses or support proxy forces, such as Tigrayan or Amhara factions opposed to Eritrean influence. Ethiopia's internal strife and regional ambitions. Ethiopia's internal challenges further complicate the picture. Since the Tigray War erupted in November 2020, the country has grappled with a deadly insurgency, humanitarian crises, and now a vicious conflict in the Amhara region. Yemeni's Post points to these issues as the fulcrum of regional tension, criticizing Ethiopia's unwarranted campaign of provocation against Eritrea, particularly through its January 2024 Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, with Somaliland. This deal, granting Ethiopia access to a Red Sea port in exchange for potential recognition of Somaliland's independence, has enraged Somalia, which considers Somaliland part of its territory, and drawn criticism from Eritrea as another element of regional tension. Web reports from the House of Lords Library and Atlantic Council highlight how the MOU has escalated regional rivalries, with Somalia threatening to expel Ethiopian troops from its soil, and Egypt sending arms to Somalia in a counter-move. Ethiopia's pursuit of maritime access, legally if possible and militarily if necessary, as Yemeni notes, risks alienating neighbors and reigniting border disputes with Eritrea, said Rashid Abdi, a regional analyst with the International Crisis Group, in an interview with this outlet. For Eritrea, Ethiopia's landlocked status and port ambitions threaten its strategic position along the Red Sea, where it has long guarded its sovereignty jealously. The 1998-2000 war, sparked by Ethiopia's occupation of Eritrean territories like Badme, remains a raw memory, and Yemeni's Post underscores Eritrea's determination to prevent history from repeating itself. Those who never accepted the EEBC arbitral award in good faith or harbor some intent in fomenting conflict continue to peddle false allegations of Eritrean troop presence in border areas, he wrote, referring implicitly to Ethiopia. The combination of these factors, divergent narratives, Eritrean militarization, and Ethiopia's internal and regional maneuvers, raises the specter of renewed conflict. Historical precedent is sobering. The 1998-2000 war left tens of thousands dead and displaced millions, while Eritrea's involvement in the Tigray conflict, where it provided sanctuary to Ethiopian troops but was later accused of war crimes, strained relations further. If Ethiopia interprets Eritrea's mobilization as preparation for aggression, it might deploy forces along the border or support Eritrean dissidents, risking direct clashes. Conversely, Eritrea could back opposition groups in Ethiopia, such as Tigrayan or Amhara factions, leading to a proxy war. The humanitarian toll could be catastrophic. HRC's warnings about human rights abuses, arbitrary detention, forced labor, and sexual violence against conscripts suggest that Eritrea's mobilization could drive another wave of refugees into Ethiopia, Sudan, or Europe, straining resources and fueling regional tension. Ethiopia's ongoing conflicts, combined with a new front against Eritrea, could create a belt of chaos as warned in an Al Jazeera opinion piece, with devastating economic and geopolitical consequences. Geopolitically, the Horn's strategic location, overlooking the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden, makes it a focal point for global powers like the US, China, and the EU. Renewed conflict could disrupt trade routes, empower extremist groups like Al-Shabaab, and draw international intervention, further complicating the situation. Paths to peace or peril. Despite the risks, there are glimmers of hope. Yemeni's call for respect for sovereignty and international law aligns with calls from regional and global actors for dialogue. The African Union, United Nations, and Turkey, which mediated failed talks between Ethiopia and Somalia in 2024, could play a role in enforcing the EEBC ruling, clarifying the Somaliland MOU, and supporting the Pretoria Agreement. The people are demanding peace on both sides, and it's good to hear political leaders talking of peace now. Eritrean refugee Kiflom Gebremedin told the BBC in 2018, echoing a sentiment that persists today. However, HRCE's concerns about Eritrea's human rights record could prompt international pressure on Isaias to reduce militarization, potentially de-escalating tensions if tied to assurances against Ethiopian aggression. Meanwhile, Ethiopia must address its internal conflicts and regional diplomacy to rebuild trust with neighbors. Investments in trade and infrastructure, as suggested in web reports, could stabilize the region, reducing the incentive for conflict over ports or borders. Yet, without urgent action, the region risks sliding back into violence. The stakes are incredibly high, said Abdi, the crisis group analyst. Both nations, along with their international partners, must prioritize dialogue over confrontation to prevent another devastating war. As the Horn of Africa braces for what could be a pivotal moment, the world watches closely. The legacy of the 1998 to 2000 war, the scars of Tigray, and the specter of new conflict hang heavy. But so too does the possibility of lasting peace if cooler heads prevail.